Suzy Deyoung. I'm here with Dr. John Woodall of the Unity Project in the fourth of our series of videos. We've discussed in the prior one how our response to trauma plays out in our parenting and with our children. And now Dr. Woodall is going to discuss how it plays out within our community.
Right.
And there's a lot going on there.
Well, there is. And you know, we find ourselves in this improbable situation where our little town is the focus of the attention in the world, and you know, we were intruded on by all those cameras and things. But something that I've seen over and over again that I wanted to make sure we talked about in these videos was how this sense of this, remember the rigid identity we talked about before and the weakened identity? That sense of when we have a sense of powerlessness over such a horrible event like the 14th of December. And then we have a sense of powerlessness over our own emotions. I'm crying, I'm angry, and so this sense of powerlessness kind of runs through our lives. And then now there's an organization that's supposed to be helping, but I'm not seeing the help that I think I need. It actually accentuates our sense of powerlessness. And if we're not careful, it pulls us into these rigid identities where we see an us and a them. It's you know, I don't know, I'm not picking on anybody, but like the teachers union and the administration, the school board and the superintendent, this organization against the United Way, or this, or blah, blah, you know, or husbands and wives, where we're seeing a lot of me and a lot of them, but we're not seeing enough us. So it's a natural and normal part of a grieving process in a community, but if we don't watch for it, it will tear us apart. And so the promise of being able to have a new kind of dialogue in Newtown, the promise of being able to say that we're hoping to show our resilient, compassionate strengths, we jeopardize that unless we're aware that this tendency to move into this rigidity because of our sense of powerlessness, it can overtake us.
Well, there's examples of that lack of awareness tearing other communities apart, aren't there?
There are, and you know more than I about, you know, in places where there have been similar tragedies. So it's understandable, but we should learn from it and then put safeguards in now to prevent these things from happening. So talking first about our intimate relationships and our parenting, it really starts there. If we get good in that, we'll be less likely to extend these problems out into the community. And at a core piece of that are two issues. One is being aware of how our identity is being affected when we're feeling isolated. When we feel isolated and powerless, we're more prone to this kind of us and them thinking, both in our relationships and in the community. And the other is that if we're adopting an embracing view of the world, if we're making that compassionate choice, if we're, despite our fear, despite our anger, if we're choosing that compassionate identity anyway, it also means that we have to adopt a different way of speaking to each other. And this is one of the things that really attracted me to Sandy Hook Promise, is that you said right up front, things have to change. It can't be the way it was anymore. Change has to happen. And we're not committing ourselves to a particular legal platform or policy platform. We're committing ourselves to a dialogue.
That was it, dialogue and conversation.
A new way of speaking to each other. So in the presentation we want to do on the 11th and in the workshops we hope to do afterwards, we're going to practice, how do you talk to each other? How do you have this kind of a conversation? How do we put up barriers to this tendency to create an us and a them? So the promise of Sandy Hook, the promise of Newtown is right there for us if we can make it through this minefield that's in front of us from our own natural tendencies to fall into this us and them thinking. So like we said, we'd like a moratorium on divorces for this year. I think we should also have a moratorium of lobbing grenades at other people and other organizations, and really make a conscious effort to think that we really are in this together.
You've worked with communities that have had a lot of discord among them, and had some success,
Yeah.
right, in bringing people. What have been some of the ways?
Well, the one that was the most inspiring to me was when I was at Harvard. I was asked to facilitate a week-long dialogue between Bosnian women who were from different religious backgrounds. So there were Serb women and Orthodox, Christian, Catholic, Muslim, and Jewish women. All of them could point to the other side and say, I lost a husband from your people, or I lost a son, or I lost a father. They all had bitter grievances against people sitting at the table. And in the course of a week, by watching this tendency and creating a sense of our common humanity based on these gems we were talking about, the things we share as human beings, they were able to come through and create an amazing organization called Strength in Diversity, where they were going to learn about each other's cultures and teach people back home. So that's, like we said in the first video, I've seen the best of humanity come from the worst situations, and that's just not a fluffy thing to say. I've seen it. I've seen former child soldiers become little Mandelas, right before our eyes. So it's possible. And if we are mindful of a few key things here in Newtown, there's a wonderful promise for our kids, for our community, and maybe as an example to the rest of the world.
Thank you.
Okay.
In the next and last in this series, we will be discussing what role Newtown can play in creating a culture of peace nationwide.